In conversations before with friends of mine, colleagues, whatever you would like to call them in fitness, I've often talked about certain issues with bias. I talk about it in my videos, I talk about it when I blog. It's a major, major issue with the fitness field, really. The entire area of fitness, as in terms of personal training, group exercise training, the kind of fitness industry that most people consume out in the public. There are issues with it in research and academia as well, but that's a separate discussion. What I'm talking about right now is people in the industry who are training people, who are applying exercise to clients out in the field. This issue is that lots of times, our pride tells us, especially once we learn a certain number of facts or a certain amount of science, or we master certain methods to a sufficient degree, our pride tells us that we're done, that we no longer have to think. We have learned enough and we are now experts. We get to label ourselves as such. So we don't have to worry about having a thought process that continuously re-examines the assumptions we've made in the past. We can start making assumptions now and just riding on that, and that's a huge mistake. I say this also because there are certain people in my network, whom I won't name, who are members of a certain organization or a couple of different organizations, which I won't name, because it's not really just applicable to these people or these organizations. Really, it applies to people all over in this industry. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, potentially. And that is this issue that if you had a bias before and you're introduced to reasons why that bias was wrong, why your preconceived notions weren't correct, why you were thinking about things the wrong way, if somebody comes in and hands you a better thought process or a better method that at least on the surface seems to make a lot more sense logically or scientifically or what have you than the old method, then you adopt the new one, and then you say, oh, okay, well, now I know what bias is. Now I know what to look for. Now I'm evidence-based and I have a better thought process, so I'm immune to bias now. I know a lot of individuals who seem truly convinced that they are incapable of being fooled. And ironically, many of these people are walking around fooling themselves every day. There are people, let's take an example. I've talked about foam rolling before in another video and in some of my writing. Now, foam rolling is one of these things that certain people absolutely love to do. They are just attached to it. I've talked about our attachments before. We're all human and we love the habits or the methods that we pick up along the way. We become personally invested in them. We put a lot of time into them. Some of our personal identity might be wrapped up in these things. So we cling to them, and it's hard to let them go. Well, foam rolling is just one of those things. I'm not trying to pick on it, but it makes for a good example because there are certain people in some of these organizations I referred to who will adopt this idea that foam rolling is always bad. They say, oh, well, the scientific evidence doesn't support it, yada, yada, yada. And that may or may not be the case depending on exactly what they're talking about. But then they don't continually re-examine that idea. If somebody tries to present new evidence, they tend to start discarding it outright. They've written it into their brain that foam rolling is always bad. So what they've really done, let's say they used to do that, or they used to do a lot of static stretching, or they used to incorporate a lot of wobbly stuff or unstable exercises to work on stability or proprioception or whatever other buzzword in their exercises. They used to do that before, and they've discarded that. They've abandoned that because somebody told them, well, here are the science-based reasons why you should not do that. They've abandoned those things, and now they judge them forever. So all they've really done is gotten rid of one bias and substituted another one in its place. That's not learning, really. That's not improving as a professional. We need to be able to be proven wrong always, forever. It never ends. The moment you decide that you are beyond reproach or that you cannot be fooled is the moment you cripple yourself. At that point, you endanger your ability to be objective, your ability to assimilate new information with an impartial eye. If you call yourself a professional, and especially if you call yourself objective or you call yourself evidence-based, if you throw around that term, you better not do that. So I wanted to talk about that because this has come up recently in conversations before, and I see it a lot. It's actually getting worse in some circles. People who maybe started off with the best of intentions who have begun to go down a road where now they start to judge other people. How many of us started in this field knowing absolutely nothing? Well, all of us, right? We didn't come out of the womb with ingrained knowledge of exercise science or human psychology, training methods, and that thought process. We had to develop that. We had to acquire that. Yet, once we get to a certain point, we conveniently forget that and start judging other people in the field. We start pointing our finger and laughing. We start saying, oh, well, that's all bad for some arbitrary reason, or for some reason that seems to make sense, but maybe doesn't always. Well, then are you really any better than the people you're judging? What are you really here for? What's the purpose? Are you a trainer because you want to stroke your ego? Are you a coach because you want to feel smart? Or are you doing this because you want to be the best you can possibly be? Because if you do, if that's what you want, then you gotta be objective. There's no room for arrogance. There's no room for hubris. There's no room for thinking you're immune to being fooled, because the moment you think that, you're already fooling yourself.